So this boat was in my local marina the other day, and it's a huge boat. It says on the side of it that it's 63 feet long, and it says never enough. And the issue is that in our materialistic world, it's never enough. You can never have enough. But what I find is that all this fiberglass, all these boats that are never enough and all kinds of other cutesy names also are always in port. And I think that the reason for that is that materialism, which became a kind of god for, at least for Americans and for many others around the world, and still is for many others around the world, became a kind of god. It actually does not satisfy the spiritual need. And everybody has a spiritual need, they just don't know it. When people strive to have bigger and bigger boats and it's never enough, you get the one boat, and the first thing you say when you go out boating is, we need a bigger boat. And until you get to that boat that I just showed you, never enough. And then they just sit there in the marina because it's not satisfying as you think it would be. It's just like having a fancy car in your garage or in your parking lot. It might have given you great pleasure to be in the Mercedes showroom and buy the Mercedes, but in the end, it's just a vehicle that's got four wheels and it gets you where you want to go. So it was just hubris that got you to buy the Mercedes, but in the end, just like the truck that my friend John drives, and at one point I had a 21-year-old Camry that we were driving, those get us around also, and they sit in the parking lot right next to all the fancy cars. And so there's no spiritual satisfaction in that. That's my observation.
So when you say, to clarify, when you say that materialism is the new God, it's a God, but it's an insufficient God, right?
It's not a satisfying God because it doesn't satisfy the spiritual need. You're striving spiritually to get to that point where you have this thing, and then you get the thing, and you just want another thing.
But that's based on an old religious structure, isn't it? Of an American, for instance, an American religious structure that said that, hey, God will reward you if you're virtuous, and that's the measure of your virtue.
Right, except that's the wrong thing to be looking for in your religion, too.
But I mean, all I'm saying is, isn't that the origin of it?
Well, I think that may be the origin.
So there is a deeper spiritual paradigm, but it's a defective one.
Well, it's a defective one because at some point you get to the point of having bigger and bigger things. And I intentionally bought a house with a very small lawn, but most people who buy a house will buy a house with a huge lawn, and then they spend 3 or 4 hours out on the lawn every weekend cutting the grass. And I cut my grass in 15 minutes this morning. So, the point is that with materialism, it's spiritually satisfying to try to strive for things, but then you get there and you find out it isn't what you thought it would be. And so Dr. Jung sort of covered it. The gist of it is in the 7 Sermons of the Dead. Jung has a vision of these ghosts visiting his house in 1916. They knock on the door very intensely. It's a vision. You think of it as a kind of dream. And when he opens the door, they say, we have been to Jerusalem where we found not what we wanted. And so it seems to me that's sort of the message of materialism, which is, you think that you want something, whatever it is, whether it's a woman that you're going to marry or whatever, and you don't find what you actually need. And so, I mean, if it's a man or a woman that is going to become your spouse, you have this honeymoon period where you project onto them the perfect mate. And then 6 weeks after the wedding, you find out that your spouse snores or something. I'll be a little bit delicate here. You find out your spouse snores and wakes you up 4 or 5 times a night. And so that's not quite as pretty and beautiful as you thought it would be. And so then you have to come back and learn about reality and learn how to be a mature human being and start to learn how to individuate, because the world isn't the way you imagined it when you were 5 years old and daddy was calling you princess.